The White House and the Kremlin are two of the most guarded buildings on the planet, with the sole purpose of protecting some of the world's most powerful leaders. Both buildings have unique architectural designs and are loaded with secret features and defenses you haven't seen before or didn't even know existed. But when comparing these national symbols, one question stands: which is better? Since its construction, the White House has been more than just another house where the President of the United States lives and works. It stands as the People's House, a symbol of democracy where every American can feel a sense of belonging. The White House was built on 18 acres, roughly the size of 14 football fields. It is enormous, with 6 stories and a whopping 55,000 square feet of floor space. Inside are 132 rooms, 35 bathrooms, 412 doors, 147 windows, 28 fireplaces for those cold DC winters, 8 staircases, and 3 elevators. There's only one main kitchen, but it's big enough to serve 140 people. And if the menu for the day is hors d'oeuvres, it can serve more than 1,000 people. Built in the late 1700s, the White House is very young compared to the Kremlin. Although some things get better with time, age alone is not enough of a metric to determine whether the White House is better than the Kremlin. Despite being centuries older than the White House, the Kremlin looks like it was planned and built in the 20th century. Hate Putin, sure, but it's much harder to hate one of the architectural wonders of the world. The Kremlin was built by Italian architects during the reign of Ivan III, around 1485 to 1495. Behind those striking red walls is a complex of at least 15 separate structures, including museums open to the public under careful supervision. The Russian state doesn't want people putting their grubby fingers where they don't belong, or even worse, leaving with something that isn't theirs. The Kremlin is built on historic ground, the Borovitsky Hill. It sits on 68 acres right in the heart of Moscow, making the grounds of the White House look meager by comparison. With spacious squares, cozy gardens, 5 palaces, 4 ceremonial gold-domed cathedrals, and a staff of over 1,000 guards and officials, the Kremlin is a fortress that hides many secrets, one that scientists, historians, and archaeologists have been trying to uncover for years. The centerpiece of the Kremlin is the Grand Kremlin Palace, which used to be the home of Tsar Nicholas I. This palace is located with lavish anterooms, reception halls, and private quarters that would make the man in the Oval Office at least a little bit jealous. This grand palace is where Putin spends his time conducting state business, or taking a leave from antagonizing other world leaders. Due to its beauty and rich history, UNESCO included the Kremlin in its list of World Cultural Heritage in 1990. Compared to the White House, which serves as a home for the President of the United States and an office to him and his staff, the Kremlin's enormous size, history, and grandeur make it a monumental symbol of Russian authority. To really determine which is better, we need to understand how these two buildings house state power on the global stage. On any given day, the White House receives approximately 6,000 visitors. When a head of government or reigning monarch visits, a state dinner, one of the grandest and most glamorous of all White House affairs, is hosted in an expression of goodwill. Press conferences are held in the press briefing room, a small theater in the West Wing, while diplomatic meetings can be held in any of the many offices in the White House. But it's not just about meetings and conferences. Sometimes, some pretty dope parties and events are hosted. The White House Easter egg rolls, a tradition dating back to the late 1800s, is one of many notable parties usually held in the White House. In 1930, almost 50,000 people were in attendance. The party went out of hand. It was so chaotic that First Lady Lou Hoover had to use the Rose Garden as a lost and found bureau where gone astray children could be brought to their parents. With recreational features like a movie theater, bowling lane, gym, tennis court, swimming pool, jogging track, and billiard room, the White House effortlessly balances diplomacy with comfort. However, things have changed since 2011. In recent times, events held at the White House are strictly by invitation. And if you have no business there, it will take an incredible feat like winning a Medal of Honor or the Nobel Prize to get an invite. Unlike the White House, the Kremlin is a little uptight, but it has always been a ceremonial and religious ground. The gold-domed Dormition Cathedral serves as the chief seat of the Russian Orthodox Church. Many coronations and royal weddings have taken place within its frescoed interior. Right next to the Dormition Cathedral is the Palace of Facets, one of the oldest stone buildings in Moscow. Its gold-adorned pillars and frescoed walls used to be a throne room and banqueting hall for the 16th and 17th century czars. But today, it's part of the Grand Kremlin Palace and serves as Putin's official ceremonial hall. One reception hall doesn't cut it for Putin. Aside from the Palace of Facets, the Grand Kremlin Palace has 5 different reception halls. The 61-meter-long Georgievsky is the largest. It was named after the Order of St. George the Victorious. Its walls are decorated with gold-embossed stars and insignia with the motto "For Service and Bravery." 18 zinc pylons support the ceiling, and at the top, you'll find decorative statues symbolizing the country's military victories. The Georgievsky is usually used to present military awards, decorations, Nobel Prizes, or meetings of party representatives with civilians. It's connected to the smaller 31-meter-long Alexandrovsky, the Hall of the Order of St. Alexander Nevsky. This is where meetings of the State Council, the advisory body to the Russian head of state, are held. There is also the Andreevsky, the Hall of the Order of St. Andrew. This hall is primarily used for solemn meetings and events. It is where the inauguration of the Russian president takes place. In the Grand Kremlin Palace alone, you'll find at least 700 rooms, 5 times more than in the White House. With that many rooms in one building alone, the Kremlin is a not-so-small city within a city with countless historic chambers, each one showcasing Russia's cultural and historic legacy on its frescoed walls. In contrast, the White House is efficient and has more modern amenities. Despite their functions, let's not forget that these buildings still serve as homes to 2 of the world's most powerful and influential men. Since the safety of these men is paramount, how are they protected? In 2011, several shots were fired at the White House from a semi-automatic rifle, but none penetrated. With that info in mind, I believe no one is dumb enough to risk their life taking shots at the White House again. But in the event that someone tries, there are several rooftop snipers constantly on the lookout, ready to take out threats. Everything from the grounds to the skies is being watched. Groups of armed guards patrol 24/7. If you somehow manage to get your hands on an invisibility cloak and get up to no good or worse, the infrared cameras and perimeter sensors would alert security services of your presence. For aircraft that stray into prohibited Area 56, the White House's no-fly zone, they are greeted by this, a Coast Guard MH-65 Dolphin helicopter. If the incursion is considered harmless, best-case scenario, you get your pilot license revoked permanently. Worst-case scenario, you face federal prosecution and time behind bars. If you're unlucky, instead of a warning from Coast Guard helicopters, you'd be saying hello to your maker when the anti-aircraft systems, which include the Avenger missile system, do their job. There have been several attempts to break into the White House. In 2014, a 2-year-old managed to squeeze through the gates to the north and delay a presidential address. Impressive stuff. What headlines were you making when you were a toddler? None. In 2023, the White House fence was raised from 6.5 feet to 13. That's 3,500 feet of thick iron bars fitted with pressure sensors, anti-climb, and anti-intrusion technology to ensure no one gets an unsupervised field day at the White House. If you must get into the White House, book a tour like everybody else. Like the White House, the first line of defense for the Kremlin is its walls. It is 2,235 meters long, and the height ranges from 5 to 19 meters depending on the terrain. There would be no breaching these walls unless you receive a blood transfusion from Bruce Banner. While the Secret Service protects the man in the Oval Office, Putin is protected by an army of visible and invisible guards from the Federal Guard Service. Since the invasion of Ukraine and the 2022 assassination of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, security at the Kremlin has been ramped up. While poisoning is a serious endemic in Russia, Putin doesn't have to worry since he has a special group of officers and his 36-year-old chef Jerome Regaud tasked with the primary assignment of sticking to strict protocols, weighing every ounce of food for accuracy and checking all the meals before it gets to his table. The Kremlin offers most of its protection in the form of secrets. It is a maze of mirrored corridors and rooms that would lead any unwanted guests astray. If the president of the Russian Federation is taken out on his home turf, it had to have been an inside job. Both the White House and the Kremlin are fortified to the extremes, but the Kremlin stands out thanks to its combination of ancient defenses, secrets, and modern innovations. The Kremlin thrives on its secrets, but the White House also has secrets of its own. There's no shortage of conspiracy theories about the White House. In fact, the entire building is shrouded in secret features, some very well known, others speculated. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor, the brass decided that the president needed a concrete air raid shelter, one outfitted with everything needed to stay alive, communicate with the outside world, and keep a country running. The shelter is called the Presidential Emergency Operations Center, or the PEOC bunker. It sits about 120 feet underground underneath the east wing of the White House and is rumored to be able to withstand a nuclear attack. In 2001, the POC bunker is where the then Vice President Dick Cheney and eventually President Bush were moved to. Tunnels seem to be the order of the day when you have a mansion in the picture. The system of passageways under the White House is no myth. It is very real. There's a tunnel that leads from the Oval Office down to the POC bunker. Between the East Wing and the Treasury Building, there is a 761-foot-long tunnel that serves as an emergency escape route. There are also speculations about underground passages leading to the Pentagon, the Capitol Building, Blair House, and the residence of the Vice President. Rumors of the White House tunnels literally spread far and wide, but specifications about these tunnels and their existence are well above our clearance level. Unlike the White House, the Kremlin is not keen on revealing its secrets. Its opulent apartments lined with gold remain closed to the public as the Russian state seeks to preserve centuries of its imperial history. However, the Kremlin also has its tunnels, built originally for defense. These tunnels connect key areas within the Kremlin complex. Many of them were built during Prince Dmitry Donskoy's reign of 1359. They link key buildings in the complex and serve as a secret link to the outside. Some of these tunnels were used as escape routes, routes for bringing in supplies, and even arsenals in case the Kremlin was under siege. Recently, these tunnels have served purposes other than their originally intended use. Since they are vast, numerous, and unknown to the public, rumors are that the tunnels have been used to hide the bodies of enemies killed in political intrigues. The Kremlin adds to its layer of mystery with its emphasis on select personnel and restrictions regarding its kitchen and ceremonial halls, while the White House offers a modern sophistication. But without a doubt, these two buildings are national symbols that have come to define their respective nations. Bye for now.